5 friends, 1 road trip, 8 years of silence. Everyone thought they'd taken a wrong turn, that maybe a storm claimed them. But when the lake receded, exposing their submerged car, the question was no longer how, it was why. If you've ever dismissed small red flags between friends, if you've ever brushed off tension as just stress, this story is a warning. Because sometimes the signs of danger don't come from strangers. They live in the silence between people you trust most. Today, we break down the warning signs the world missed one by one. And the final sign, the one hidden inside that car, will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty, fear, and survival. Northern California, March 13th, 2015. The kind of perfect Friday afternoon that promises adventure. Outside a Sacramento apartment complex on Fulton Avenue, 5 college friends are loading bags into a silver Honda Pilot. Their laughter bounces between parked cars as they argue over music playlists and driving shifts. Madison Chen, 21, tosses her duffel into the trunk. If we don't hit traffic, we'll make Tahoe before sunset. Ryan Keller, 22, slides into the driver's seat. He's always the one who drives first, a habit his friends tease him about but never challenge. Sophia Marquez, 20, claims the passenger seat, phone already in hand to document their weekend escape to Lake Tahoe. Evan Torres, 21, and Layla Washington, 20, take the back, completing what friends and family would later describe as the inseparable 5. Sacramento State juniors with futures so bright they needed to squint. Traffic cameras capture them, leaving the city limits at 3:27 p.m., Evan's arm hanging out the window catching the warm spring air. His mother would later describe it as the last image she had of her son, half his face visible in the reflection of the side mirror, smiling as they drove toward the mountains. That was the last verified sighting of them alive. They had done this drive a dozen times, Detective Mark Jensen tells me 8 years later. We're sitting in his office at the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, walls lined with case files from the investigation. It's a straight shot up Highway 50, 3 hours max, well-traveled, well-maintained, no reason to think anything could go wrong. But something did. By Sunday evening, when none of the 5 friends had returned any calls or messages, a subtle current of worry began to spread through their families. I thought maybe they extended their stay, says Catherine Marquez, Sophia's mother. Cell reception can be spotty in the mountains. I left 3 voicemails telling myself not to worry. But Catherine did worry, enough to text Madison's mother. Have you heard from the kids? She hadn't. Neither had Ryan's parents, or Evan's, or Layla's. By Monday morning, the first official missing persons report was filed. The investigation began with standard procedures, checking hotel registrations in Tahoe, calling hospitals, and reviewing highway patrol logs for accident reports. Nothing. Then came the first real hint that something was wrong. Toll cameras on US 50 had no record of the Honda Pilot entering the Lake Tahoe basin. That's when we knew, Jensen says, pulling up a digital map showing Highway 50's winding ascent into the Sierra Nevada. Either they never made it to Tahoe or they took another route entirely. Phone records showed all 5 devices lost signal around 8:41 p.m. that Friday night. The final ping placed them somewhere near the Sierra Ridge, in an area dense with pine forests and ravines. Not unusual for coverage to drop in such terrain. What was unusual was that none of their phones ever reconnected. By Wednesday, the case had escalated from missing persons to possible accident. Search and rescue teams combed the highways and fire roads, looking for any sign of the silver Honda. Helicopters with thermal imaging surveyed the canyons. Family members drove the route repeatedly, stopping at every turnout, showing photos at every gas station. Nothing. 2 weeks later, a park ranger reported seeing faint tire tracks leading toward an old Forest Service road marked closed for repairs. The tracks were nearly washed away by recent rain, but they matched the width of a mid-sized SUV. Teams followed the lead but found the road empty, ending at a locked gate with no sign of forced entry. At that point, we were looking at three possibilities, Jensen explains, ticking them off on his fingers. 1. They'd deliberately gone off-grid somewhere, though that made no sense given their schedules and relationships. 2. They'd been involved in an accident in a location so remote it hadn't been spotted. Or 3, he pauses, something else entirely. The case drew comparisons to other mysterious group disappearances. The Yuba County Five from 1978, where 5 young men vanished in similar terrain, their vehicle eventually found but with no clear explanation for why they had strayed from their route. Or the Jamison family, who disappeared in 2009, their remains discovered years later with no definitive cause of death ever established. As days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, the search scaled back. The 5 friends joined the ranks of the inexplicably missing. Their faces appeared on billboards across California. Their story featured on national news. Their names entered into databases that track the hundreds of thousands who vanish in America each year. For their families, time froze on March 13, 2015. You keep waiting for the phone to ring, Catherine Marquez tells me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Even years later, when someone knocks on the door unexpectedly, your heart stops. You think, maybe this is it. Maybe they found them. But for 8 years, there was nothing to find. At first, investigators thought the mountains swallowed them, but the deeper they looked, the more it seemed something or someone had pushed them toward it. Before we understand what happened to Madison, Ryan, Sophia, Evan, and Layla in those mountains, we need to understand what was happening between them, because something was already fracturing long before they packed their bags. When 5 friends vanished together, everyone assumes they were on the same page, says Dr. Lila Chen, the forensic psychologist who later consulted on the case. But humans are complicated. Group dynamics are complicated, and sometimes the cracks are visible only in retrospect. Those cracks began to emerge as investigators recovered digital breadcrumbs from the friends' lives, cloud backups of text messages, social media exchanges, emails, and photo timestamps. Together, they painted a picture different from the one their families believed. The friends weren't as inseparable as everyone thought. I found it strange, says Tom Bennett, father of Madison's boyfriend and early advocate for the investigation. When I gained access to Madison's laptop, I saw group messages that showed tension, nothing alarming, just the kind of stuff you brush off, except maybe you shouldn't. The recovered texts revealed small arguments in the days leading up to the trip, disagreements about expenses, subtle jabs masked as jokes, messages left unread without response. February 28, 2015, 2 weeks before the trip. Anyone else think it's weird Ryan keeps changing the trip dates? Sophia wrote. He's probably just checking weather. Stop being paranoid, Madison replied. I'm not paranoid. Forget it, Sophia answered. March 7th, 2015, 6 days before. Do we really need to stay at that expensive place Layla picked? I'm broke, Evan complained. It's called having standards. We're not sleeping in the car like last time, Layla shot back. I'll cover you, E. Not a big deal, Ryan offered. I don't need charity, Evan responded. Whatever, man. Just trying to help, Ryan concluded. These seem like normal friend disagreements, Jensen admits, but there's a pattern. Small fractures in trust, people feeling sidelined or judged. It's subtle. Most revealing was Evan's laptop, retrieved from his apartment. In a password-protected document labeled Thoughts, investigators found an unsent message drafted the night before they left. I'm only going because everyone expects me to. Everything feels off lately. Ryan's been weird since the party. Sophia barely talks to me anymore. I just want to clear my head, but I don't think this trip is going to help. Maybe I should have said no. He never shared these thoughts with anyone. Instead, he smiled for photos as they left Sacramento, looking for all the world like he couldn't wait to hit the road. This is what we call masked discord, Dr. Chen explains. People, especially young adults, often suppress interpersonal concerns to maintain group harmony. They'll smile through discomfort rather than address it directly, but that suppression has psychological consequences. It creates pressure. That pressure began to show itself on the road. At a gas station outside Placerville, about 45 minutes into their journey, a witness recalled seeing the group in what appeared to be a disagreement. This young woman, with long, dark hair, was standing by the pumps, arms crossed, looking upset, says Janet Harmon, who was filling her tank at the same station. A guy, I think he had glasses, walked away toward the store. The others stayed by the car, not really talking. When he came back, they all got in like nothing happened, but you could feel it. That weird tension. The woman Janet saw was likely Sophia. The man, based on descriptions, was Evan. It's like watching rust spread underneath glossy paint, Jensen tells me as we review the case files. From the outside, everything looks fine. But below the surface, there's deterioration happening molecule by molecule. Given enough time, it compromises structural integrity. This metaphor would prove tragically apt. Family and friends missed these warning signs entirely. The five maintained their public image of perfect friendship, posting photos, tagging each other in memes, keeping up appearances. It's a phenomenon psychologists call curated intimacy, the gap between how close people appear to be and how close they actually are. Look at their final Instagram post, Jensen says, sliding his phone across the desk. The photo shows all five friends outside Madison's apartment, arms around each other, captioned Tahoe bound, mash squad goals, Mausjaksha weekend vibes. Their smiles reveal nothing of what was brewing beneath, but something was brewing. And when the group's chosen route suddenly changed without explanation, that unspoken tension would shift from psychological pressure to physical danger. And then, when their route changed without explanation, the tone of the story shifted from confusion to fear. One of the most disturbing discoveries in the case came 3 weeks after the disappearance, when investigators gained access to the Google account linked to Madison Chen's phone. Like many travelers, Madison had used Google Maps to navigate their trip to Lake Tahoe. The digital breadcrumbs this created would become crucial evidence. What we found made no sense, Jensen says, pulling up a digital map on his computer. Their original route was straightforward, Highway 50 all the way to South Lake Tahoe, standard, safe, well-traveled. But at 6:12 p.m. as they approached the halfway point, the destination pin moved. Instead of continuing on Highway 50, the navigation now directed them onto Forest Route 28N06, a secondary road that cut through Pine Hollow Canyon, a remote area used primarily by Forest Service vehicles and locals who knew the terrain. It added nearly 2 hours to their journey and took them through one of the region's most notorious cellular dead zones. The question became, who changed it and why? Jensen continues. The navigation log shows a manual override. Someone physically altered their destination. This was no algorithmic suggestion or automatic reroute due to traffic. Someone in that car deliberately changed their course. We can't determine which phone made the change, Tom Bennett explains. His background in data forensics made him a valuable, unofficial consultant to the investigation. The log only shows that it happened from a device logged into Madison's account. It could have been Madison herself, or anyone she had shared her credentials with. What makes this revelation more chilling is what happened next. At 6:32 p.m., approximately 20 minutes after the route change, Sofia Marquez sent a text to her sister Elena. It was brief, just 4 words. This road feels wrong. It was the last message Sophia ever sent. Elena never saw the text that night. I was at a movie, she tells me, eyes fixed on some distant point as we sit in her living room 8 years later. When I checked my phone around 10:30, I had 3 messages from Sophia. The first 2 were about what time they'd arrive at the cabin. That last one? I thought maybe she was joking about Ryan's driving or something. I didn't think. Her voice trails off. The weight of those 4 words, "This road feels wrong," has haunted her for 8 years. I should have called her back immediately. I should have known something was wrong. But she didn't. No one did. There's a psychological phenomenon called normalization of deviance, Dr. Chen explains. We have an incredible capacity to rationalize warning signs, especially when we're in groups. If Sophia felt something was wrong with their route, why didn't she speak up more forcefully? Why didn't she show the others her concern? The answer likely lies in group dynamics. In close-knit groups, there's often what we call the illusion of unanimity. Dr. Chen continues, no one wants to be the alarmist. No one wants to challenge the group's momentum. So even when our instincts scream something is wrong, we stay silent. That silence can be fatal. Route 28N06 winds through dense forest, with steep drops on one side and rock faces on the other. In places, the road narrows to a single lane. During spring, when the friends made their journey, melting snow can create hazardous conditions. Mud, fallen branches, occasional rock slides. It's beautiful but unforgiving terrain. What bothers me is that none of them had ever taken this route before, Jensen says. Based on their travel histories and GPS data from previous trips, they always stuck to main highways. So why suddenly detour through one of the most remote stretches in the region? Whatever the reason, the decision placed them on a road where help was impossibly far away, where cell phones couldn't connect to towers, where a small mistake could become catastrophic in seconds. It's like turning onto a road without guardrails, Jensen says quietly. Both literal and emotional guardrails. Investigators later discovered that Forest Route 28N06 had been conditionally closed that weekend due to a collapsed culvert near mile marker 17. Signs posted at the entrance warned of the closure, though local traffic was still permitted through the first section. If they saw those signs, would they have turned around? Jensen wonders. Or were they already too committed to their new course? We may never know. What we do know is that by the time they reached Pine Hollow Canyon, it was getting dark. The temperature was dropping, and 5 friends who were already navigating hidden tensions were now navigating a treacherous road they had no business being on. By the time they reached the point of no return, something inside that car had already shifted from tension to terror. What happens when 5 young people vanish from the digital world entirely? In 2015, the average college student checked their phone 85 times per day. They sent hundreds of texts. They posted to social media multiple times daily. Their lives generated constant digital noise. Until suddenly, they didn't. The most haunting aspect of the case was the abruptness, says Jensen. All 5 devices, 2 iPhones and 3 Androids, ceased all activity within a 3-minute window. The last digital footprints they left behind were 8:38 p.m. Madison's phone automatically backs up photos to her cloud storage. 8:39 p.m. Ryan's phone pings a cell tower near the entrance to Pine Hollow Canyon. 8:40 p.m. Layla's Spotify account plays Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. 8:41 p.m. Sophia attempts to send a location pin to her sister Elena. It fails to transmit. 8:41 p.m. Evan's phone accesses the flashlight function. After 8:41 p.m., digital silence. It wasn't gradual, Bennett explains. If they'd driven slowly into a dead zone, we'd expect staggered disconnections as each carrier lost signal at slightly different points. This was synchronized. All connections terminated almost simultaneously. This pattern puzzled investigators for months. Was it consistent with an accident? Could the car have plunged into water, shorting all devices at once? Was it possible someone had deliberately powered down or destroyed the phones? The timing aligned with sunset in the region. As darkness fell over Pine Hollow Canyon, the group would have been navigating increasingly difficult terrain with deteriorating visibility. Search efforts initially focused on the area where the last signal was detected. For weeks, teams scoured the canyon, rappelling into ravines, dragging ponds, searching abandoned mining tunnels. 4 days into the search, a breakthrough. A K-9 unit picked up a scent near an isolated rest stop about 2 miles beyond the last cell ping. The site showed signs of recent use. There were 2 paper coffee cups in the trash, Jensen recalls. The coffee hadn't completely evaporated, still damp at the bottom. Tire impressions in the gravel matched the Honda's tread pattern. They had stopped there. Forensic analysis later confirmed DNA on the cups matched Madison and Layla. Based on condensation patterns inside the cups, experts estimated they had been discarded between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. that Friday. The rest stop yielded one more crucial piece of evidence: tire tracks leading away, continuing deeper into the canyon. But strangely, no tracks returning. Whatever direction they took from that rest stop, Jensen says, they never came back. This discovery deepened the mystery. The friends had successfully navigated to the rest stop. They had stopped, presumably to stretch their legs, use the restroom, drink some coffee. Nothing at this point suggested panic or urgency. They were proceeding, albeit on an unusual route. What happened after they left the rest stop? The roads beyond became increasingly primitive. What had started as a paved forest route deteriorated into gravel, then dirt. Maps showed the road eventually connecting to another highway that would have taken them to Tahoe. But by a route so circuitous, it would have added hours to their journey. It makes no sense, Elena Marquez insists. Sophia knew the area. She wouldn't have agreed to take this route, especially after dark. Perhaps she didn't agree. Perhaps that was the source of her last text. This road feels wrong. There's something called the Abilene Paradox, Dr. Chen explains. It's where a group of people collectively decide to do something that no individual member actually wants to do. Everyone goes along thinking the others want it. No one speaks up. Did the 5 friends find themselves on a dangerous road that none of them actually wanted to be on, but all thought the others had chosen? Isolation amplifies confusion, Dr. Chen continues. When you can't call for advice, can't check alternate routes online, can't see clearly what's ahead, your decision-making deteriorates. Add fatigue, possibly some interpersonal tension, and you have a recipe for poor choices. The Pine Hollow region had seen similar incidents before. In 2008, the Dry Hollow disappearance involved 3 hikers who entered a similar signal dead zone and were never seen again. Their remains were discovered 2 years later, 5 miles from their intended trail, victims of disorientation and exposure. When you're cut off from communication, primitive fears take over, Dr. Chen says. The night gets darker. Sounds become threatening. Small disagreements escalate because there's no external perspective to mediate. As investigators pieced together the timeline, they believed the group continued driving for at least another hour after leaving the rest stop, taking them deep into one of the most remote sections of the canyon, a place where even search helicopters struggled to penetrate the dense tree canopy. We know they were tired, Jensen says. We know at least Sophia had reservations about their route. We know they were heading into unfamiliar territory after dark. And we know they were completely cut off from outside communication. It was the perfect storm of vulnerability. And then, under the cover of darkness, the car's path went somewhere no one could explain. 8 years passed. The search for the 5 friends never officially ended, but it transformed from active investigation to cold case. Families marked birthdays, and graduations with empty chairs. Some left bedrooms untouched. Others packed away their children's things, unable to bear the daily reminder of absence. Time moved on for everyone except the missing. Then came the drought of 2023. California's water crisis reached historic levels. Reservoirs shrank to record lows. Rivers narrowed. And Lake Silverthorne, a remote body of water nestled in the mountains, 20 miles from where the Friends were last detected, receded nearly 12 feet from its normal shoreline. On June 17, 2023, local fisherman Daryl Mack noticed something unusual in the newly exposed shallows, a metallic gleam catching the morning sun. At first I thought it was just trash, Mack tells me as we stand at the spot where he made his discovery. People dump all kinds of things in these lakes, but as I got closer, I could see it was bigger, much bigger. What Mack had spotted was the roof of a vehicle, caked in silt and algae, but unmistakably man-made. He called the authorities immediately. By nightfall, dive teams had confirmed what everyone feared. The submerged vehicle was a silver Honda Pilot with California license plates matching the one that had vanished with 5 college students 8 years earlier. I remember getting that call, Elena Marquez says, her voice hollow. 8 years of wondering, of imagining every possible scenario. And then, suddenly, there it was. Part of me had always known they were gone, but knowing how, where, it was different. The recovery operation took 2 days. Engineers had to construct a temporary road to bring in heavy equipment. Television crews gathered on the shore. Families waited at a nearby ranger station, bracing for news they had both dreaded and longed for. Detective Jensen, who had never stopped working the case even after his official reassignment, was present when they finally pulled the Honda from the lake. The vehicle was in remarkably good condition, he explains. Lake water preserves things differently than salt water or running streams. The chassis was intact, windows still in place, though cracked. The license plate was still legible. But it was what they found inside that transformed an 8-year mystery into something far more disturbing. 4 bodies were recovered from the vehicle. Dental records would later confirm them as Madison Chen, Ryan Keller, Layla Washington, and Evan Torres. Sofia Marquez was not among them. The initial assumption was that her remains had somehow been separated from the vehicle, Jensen explains, perhaps carried away by currents or animal activity. But as the forensic team processed the scene, other anomalies emerged. The passenger door on the driver's side was jammed from the inside. The panel dented inward as though someone had beaten against it with significant force. The driver's side window was completely shattered. Most tellingly, only 4 seatbelts were buckled when the car hit the water. Autopsies revealed mixed causes of death. Madison and Layla had drowned, their lungs filled with lake water. Evan had died from blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with impact during a crash. Ryan showed signs of hypothermia as the primary cause of death, with drowning as secondary, suggesting he might have been alive but severely compromised when the car entered the water. Most disturbing was the toxicology report. Traces of zolpidem, a prescription sleep medication, were found in Evan's system at levels nearly 3 times the therapeutic dose. The physical evidence didn't align with a simple accident scenario, Jensen says. The car didn't show signs of losing control on a curve or hydroplaning. The damage pattern suggested it entered the water at a shallow angle, almost as if it had been driven in deliberately. The lake itself added another layer to the mystery. Lake Silverthorne wasn't visible from any established road. To reach it, the Honda would have had to traverse nearly 2 miles of rough terrain, navigating through dense forest with no clear path. They couldn't have accidentally stumbled upon this location, Jensen insists. Someone had to know it was there. Someone had to deliberately drive toward it. But why? And where was Sophia? As the technical investigation proceeded, the emotional impact rippled through the community. For the families, The discovery was both devastating and relieving, the awful certainty finally replacing the torture of not knowing. The lake had kept them all this time, Catherine Marquez says, tears streaming down her face. All those years we were searching highways and forests, they were under the water. So close, yet impossible to find. For Elena, her sister's absence from the recovered vehicle only deepened her anguish. Everyone else got closure, she says. Everyone else could bury their child. But Sophia was still missing. Still out there somewhere. It felt like losing her all over again. The recovery team expanded their search, dredging wider areas of the lake, combing the newly exposed shoreline. They found personal items scattered in the silt, a waterlogged backpack containing Layla's clothing, Madison's prescription sunglasses, a waterproof watch belonging to Ryan that had stopped at 1:17 a.m. But they found no trace of Sophia. Lakes remember what people want to forget, Dr. Chen says. Speaking of the psychological impact of the discovery, water preserves evidence that land would erase, but it also distorts, changing colors, shifting locations, breaking down materials. What you recover is never quite what went in. This observation would prove prophetic as investigators continued to process the recovered vehicle, because what they found inside would rewrite every theory they'd developed over 8 years of searching. But when they drained the lake enough to pull the car out, what they found inside ripped the story wide open again. Among the water-damaged items recovered from the Honda was a Samsung Galaxy phone wedged under the back seat. It belonged to Madison Chen. Most electronic devices are useless after years underwater, Bennett explains. But Madison had done something crucial before their trip. She'd purchased a waterproof case for her phone to take lakeside photos in Tahoe. That simple precaution preserved what would become the most important evidence in the case. While the phone itself wouldn't power on, technicians were able to extract the memory card. Most of the data was corrupted, but among the salvageable files was a voice memo recorded at 12:42 a.m. on March 14, 2015, approximately 4 hours after their phones lost signal, and about 3 hours before the car entered the lake, based on Ryan's stopped watch. The recording, though degraded and fragmented, captured 72 seconds of conversation inside the car. What it revealed sent shockwaves through the investigation. Jensen plays the enhanced audio for me in his office, the tinny speaker doing little to diminish its impact. Need to turn around. This isn't... Ryan's voice. I told you this was wrong? How are we... Sophia interrupts. Multiple voices overlap in argument. Everyone just calm down. We can figure this. Madison tries to mediate. You're not listening to me. It wasn't... Evan shouts. A sudden thump or impact. A female scream. Don't open the door, a male voice commands. Sounds of struggle, heavy breathing. Stop it! Stop it! A female voice pleads. The car accelerates. No! A male voice yells. Static, then silence. The recording ends abruptly, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. The 5 friends were in serious conflict hours before the car entered the lake. This wasn't a tired driver taking a wrong turn, Jensen says, stopping the playback. This was panic. This was a situation spiraling out of control. Audio engineers worked for weeks to enhance the recording, isolating voices, removing background noise. They were able to identify with reasonable certainty which voices belonged to which friends based on comparative analysis with social media videos and phone messages. The most chilling part, Jensen continues, is that final "don't open the door." It suggests someone was trying to exit the vehicle while it was in motion. The physical evidence supports this: the interior damage to the door panel, the unbuckled seatbelt. Forensic analysts believe the recording captures the beginning of a physical altercation inside the car. The thump heard mid-recording is consistent with someone being struck or restrained. We've seen similar scenarios in other cases, Dr. Chen explains. The Gabrielle Stone recordings from 2011 captured a comparable escalation. What began as verbal disagreement transformed into physical struggle in the confined space of a vehicle. For the families, hearing the recording was traumatic. "That's my daughter screaming," Catherine Marquez says, her voice breaking. "That's Sophia trying to get out of that car. Someone was keeping her there against her will. But who and why?" The voices on the recording suggest at least 3 of the 5 friends were still conscious and engaged at 12:42 a.m. This contradicts early theories that they might have fallen victim to carbon monoxide poisoning or hypothermia while parked. They were awake, alert, and in conflict, Jensen says. This wasn't an accident in the traditional sense. Something was happening inside that car, something that made at least one person desperate to escape. A car becomes a pressure cooker, Dr. Chen explains. There's nowhere to walk away, no physical space to decompress. When tension escalates in such an environment, it can trigger primal fear responses: fight, flight, or freeze. Based on the recording, we hear all 3. Someone fighting, someone trying to flee, someone possibly frozen in inaction. The recording transforms our understanding of what happened that night. The 5 friends weren't simply lost in the mountains, victims of a wrong turn. They were in the midst of a situation so volatile that it involved screaming, physical struggle, and desperate attempts to escape. But even this revelation pales in comparison to what investigators found sealed inside the glove box, an item preserved not by technology, but by simple precaution. Yet it wasn't the voice memo that shocked investigators most. It was what they found sealed inside the glove box. When forensic analysts processed the Honda's interior, they followed standard protocols for water-recovered vehicles. Every compartment was carefully emptied, every crevice examined, every item cataloged. Inside the glove box, sealed in a plastic sandwich bag, they found a folded piece of paper. The bag had preserved the note from water damage, leaving the ballpoint pen ink legible despite 8 years underwater. The message was brief, just 7 words in shaky handwriting. If anyone finds this, he wasn't driving. Handwriting analysis confirmed it had been written by Sophia Marquez. "When I saw that note," Jensen says, "I knew this wasn't just a tragic accident. This was something deliberate." The pronoun he triggered immediate questions. Who wasn't driving? The evidence indicated Ryan had been behind the wheel when they left Sacramento. Was Sophia suggesting someone else had taken control of the vehicle? If so, who? And under what circumstances? The phrasing is crucial, Dr. Chen points out. Not "he didn't drive" or "he wasn't the driver." She specifically wrote "he wasn't driving," present tense, as though referring to a specific moment or action. Accident reconstruction specialists examined the Honda's remains with this new context in mind. They discovered several anomalies that had initially been attributed to the crash and years underwater. The driver's seat was positioned significantly forward from where it would have been comfortable for Ryan's 6-foot frame. The steering wheel showed impact damage consistent with someone being thrown against it, yet the driver's airbag had deployed, which should have prevented such impact. Most significantly, DNA analysis of smudges on the steering wheel revealed not just Ryan's genetic material, but a second set overlaying his, belonging to Evan Torres. The physical evidence suggests a struggle for control of the vehicle, Jensen explains. Based on seat position and DNA patterns, we believe Evan was attempting to control the wheel from the back seat, reaching forward between the front seats. This scenario aligns with the recovered audio, particularly the final moments when someone yells, "No!" as the car accelerates. The discovery of Sophia's note transformed the investigation from a search for answers about an accident to a homicide investigation. Someone inside that car had acted deliberately, with enough awareness of their actions that Sophia felt compelled to document the truth. But the note raises more questions than it answers. When did Sophia write it? How did she know they were in danger? Why place it in the glove box rather than attempt to send a message on her phone? She was planning ahead, Elena says of her sister. Sophia always thought steps ahead. If she sensed something was wrong, she wouldn't just panic. She'd try to leave evidence. The glove box location suggests forethought. It's one of the most protected areas in a vehicle during a crash or submersion. The plastic bag shows similar planning. A simple but effective way to waterproof a crucial message. Truth is like a photograph developing in reverse, Jensen says, choosing his words carefully. Each discovery doesn't add clarity. It strips away false assumptions. What we thought was an accident now looks like a deliberate act. What we thought was a group of unified friends now appears to be a powder keg of hidden conflicts. For the families, the note brought devastating implications. It meant their children hadn't simply died together in a tragic accident. It meant someone in that car had acted with intent. It meant betrayal had preceded death. How do you process that? Catherine Marquez asks. That someone your child trusted enough to travel with might have been responsible for their death? It's unthinkable. Yet the physical evidence made it increasingly difficult to avoid that conclusion. The car's speed before impact, calculated from damage patterns and skid marks preserved in the lake bed, exceeded 70 mph, far too fast for the terrain and visibility conditions, suggesting deliberate acceleration rather than a misjudged curve. The trajectory into the lake wasn't consistent with a vehicle losing control. There was no evidence of braking before entry. The angle and speed suggested something closer to a deliberate drive into the water. Tom Bennett, who had studied the recovered data obsessively, developed a theory. I believe there was a struggle for control of the car, he explains. Based on the audio and physical evidence, it appears someone, likely Evan, attempted to take control of the steering wheel from the back seat. Ryan was probably still in the driver's seat but no longer in control. Sophia, realizing what was happening, wrote that note to document the truth. But this theory had a crucial flaw. It didn't explain Sophia's absence from the recovered vehicle. That mystery would only deepen with the investigation's most shocking discovery yet. One that would completely rewrite the narrative of what happened that night in the mountains. But the final revelation came not from what was found inside the car, but where one of the missing had been before it ever went under. 4 bodies in a 5-person vehicle. Sophia Marquez was missing from the Honda when it was recovered from Lake Silverthorne. Initial theories suggested her remains might have been carried away by currents or animal activity, a common occurrence in underwater recovery cases. But as search teams combed the shoreline and lake bottom, they found no trace of Sophia, no clothing, no personal effects, nothing to suggest she had ever been in the vehicle when it entered the water. Then, on July 3, 2023, 2 weeks after the car's recovery, a search team made a discovery that changed everything. Approximately half a mile uphill from the lake, in a densely wooded area, they found skeletal remains partially covered by forest debris. Dental records confirmed what the location already suggested. They had found Sophia Marquez. But she hadn't died in the lake with her friends. She had died on land, at least half a mile from where the car was found. The location made no sense initially, Jensen says. Why would Sophia be so far from the vehicle? How did she get there? Was she trying to find help? The forensic analysis revealed disturbing answers. Sophia had died from blunt force trauma to the head before the car ever entered the lake. Based on insect activity and decomposition patterns, experts determined she had been dead for several hours before the Honda went into the water. More telling were the items found with her remains. Her shoes matched muddy footprints leading downhill toward the lake, suggesting she had walked that path while alive. In the pocket of her decomposed jacket, investigators found a torn fragment of paper with the same ballpoint pen ink as the note in the glove box. She wrote the note up there, Jensen explains, pointing to the hillside visible from the lake's edge. She tore it, kept part, and must have returned to the car to place the main portion in the glove box. Why she returned to the vehicle after apparently walking away from it, that's one of the many questions we still can't definitively answer. The discovery of Sophia's remains half a mile from the lake shattered every previous theory about the case. This wasn't a single incident where 5 friends died together in a submerged vehicle. This was a sequence of events spanning hours, with at least 2 separate death scenes. Forensic analysis of the area where Sophia was found revealed signs of struggle, disturbed ground, broken branches, a blood smear on a nearby tree trunk. She hadn't simply wandered away and collapsed. Something violent had happened on that hillside. We believe Sophia left the vehicle during the confrontation captured in the audio recording, Jensen explains. The "don't open the door" we hear may have been directed at her, but either she managed to exit before that, or she got out after the recording ended. If the conflict in the car had escalated to physical violence, Sophia may have fled for her safety, Dr. Chen suggests. Finding herself in remote wilderness, possibly pursued, she would have sought high ground, a natural survival instinct. The elevated position gives better visibility, potential cell reception, and psychological comfort. But if Sophia escaped the car, who followed her into the woods, and who later returned to the vehicle? The evidence suggests at least one other person was with Sophia on that hillside. Footprint castings taken from the scene show 2 distinct patterns, Sophia's smaller prints and a larger set matching hiking boots found in the car belonging to Evan Torres. The timeline we've constructed goes something like this, Jensen says. Around midnight, a serious conflict erupts in the car, captured in Madison's voice memo. At some point, Sophia exits the vehicle and flees uphill. Someone, likely Evan, follows her. There's a confrontation that ends with Sophia suffering fatal head trauma. Later, that person returns to the car. This scenario is supported by Sophia's injuries. The fatal wound was caused by a narrow cylindrical object with significant force, consistent with being struck by a heavy flashlight or similar tool. Evan's phone records show he activated his flashlight function at 8:41 p.m., the last digital activity recorded from his device. We believe Sophia was killed between approximately 1 Aubrais and 2 Andre a.m., Jensen continues. Evan then returned to the car, where the situation continued to deteriorate. Ryan's stopwatch indicates the car entered the lake around 3:17 a.m., about 2 hours after Sophia's estimated time of death. The discovery completely reframes our understanding of that night. This wasn't a single tragic moment where friends died together. It was a prolonged nightmare that unfolded over hours, with at least one friend turning against another with deadly intent. Elena Marquez, hearing these details during the investigation, offered a devastatingly simple summary. They didn't just drown, they fell apart. Piece by piece, the picture came together, and none of it resembled the story anyone had told back then. In the months following these discoveries, investigators from multiple agencies worked to reconstruct the events of March 13-14, 2015. Using forensic evidence, digital data, and expert analysis, they assembled what they believe is the most likely sequence of what happened to the 5 friends. The reconstruction begins with their departure from Sacramento at 3:27 p.m. Traffic cameras and witness statements confirmed they were in good spirits, if slightly subdued. They made a brief stop in Placerville, where tension was observed between Evan and the others. At 6:12 p.m., as they approached the midpoint of their journey, someone changed their navigation route from Highway 50 to Forest Route 28 N06. Cell data can't confirm who made this change, but the timing coincides with a brief stop at a scenic overlook where all five exited the vehicle. Based on physical evidence and behavioral analysis, we believe Evan suggested the route change, Jensen explains. His background as an amateur hiker gave him some familiarity with the area, though not enough for the conditions they would encounter. Sophia's text to her sister at 6:32 p.m., "This road feels wrong," suggests she had reservations about their new course, but didn't voice them strongly enough to change the group's direction. As darkness fell, they continued deeper into Pine Hollow Canyon. Their stop at the remote rest area around 9 p.m. appears to have been their last moment of relative normalcy. Coffee cups, cigarette butts, and footprints around the site suggest they spent approximately 20-30 minutes there, possibly discussing their options. "We believe this is where the fractures in the group began to widen," Dr. Chen says. "They were tired, it was dark, they had no cell reception, and they were following an unfamiliar route. Classic conditions for conflict escalation." What happened in the hours between their rest stop visit and Madison's 12:42 a.m. voice recording remains largely speculative. Based on the car's position when found and the terrain, they would have been driving increasingly difficult roads, possibly lost or confused about their location. The voice recording captures a critical escalation. Something triggered an argument serious enough that Sophia wanted to exit the vehicle. The physical evidence suggests Evan attempted to prevent this, possibly reaching from the back seat to control the steering wheel. The toxicology findings are crucial here, Jensen notes. Evan had high levels of zolpidem in his system, a prescription sleep medication he didn't have a prescription for. This would have affected his judgment, potentially making him paranoid or aggressive. Investigators believe Sophia managed to exit the vehicle during or shortly after this confrontation, fleeing uphill toward higher ground. Evan followed her, carrying his phone with the flashlight activated. The confrontation that followed left Sophia dead from blunt force trauma. Evan then returned to the car, where the other three friends were likely still alive but in various states of distress. Ryan appears to have been injured but conscious. Madison and Layla were physically unharmed, but trapped in an increasingly volatile situation. At some point, control of the vehicle shifted, Jensen explains. Evidence suggests Evan took the driver's seat, with Ryan incapacitated in the passenger seat. This explains Sophia's note. "If anyone finds this, he wasn't driving." She knew Ryan would be found in the passenger seat and wanted to document that he hadn't been driving when whatever she feared might happen actually occurred. The final act appears to have been deliberate. Physical evidence shows the Honda accelerated toward Lake Silverthorne, a body of water not visible from the road and requiring intentional navigation to reach. The car entered the water at high speed, with no evidence of braking. Madison and Layla drowned quickly. Ryan, already weakened by injury and hypothermia, survived briefly, but eventually succumbed to the cold water. Evan died from head trauma consistent with impact during entry into the lake. This wasn't an accident, Jensen concludes. Based on all available evidence, we believe Evan Torres, while in an altered mental state, deliberately drove the vehicle into Lake Silverthorne after killing Sofia Marquez. The motive remains unclear. Toxicology suggests Evan may have been experiencing side effects from the zolpidem, including possible hallucinations or paranoia. The conflicts revealed in pre-trip messages hint at underlying tensions, particularly between Evan and Ryan. "Sometimes we focus too much on motive," Dr. Chen observes. "Not all violence has clear motivation. Sometimes it's a cascade of poor decisions, altered mental states, and fight-or-flight responses in confined spaces." The reconstruction, while not answering every question, provides the most comprehensive explanation for the physical evidence found 8 years after the friends vanished. It explains Sophia's separation from the group, the injuries to different victims, and the unusual location and condition of the vehicle. The Sedona 7 case from 2009 showed similar patterns, Jensen notes. What began as minor discord in a confined space escalated to panic, then violence, then fatal decisions. The human mind, when trapped, scared, and possibly chemically altered, can make choices that seem incomprehensible in hindsight. For the families, the reconstruction offers answers but little comfort. The truth, that one friend may have deliberately harmed the others, is almost harder to accept than the mystery that preceded it. And as the evidence settled, one haunting truth remained. Sometimes the road that leads to death begins with silence among friends. When the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department officially closed the case in October 2023, they classified it as one homicide, Sophia Marquez, and four accidental deaths, Madison Chen, Ryan Keller, Layla Washington, and Evan Torres. This determination, while technically accurate based on evidence, failed to capture the complex reality of what happened that night. For the families left behind, closure brought not relief, but a different kind of pain. "I wanted them found," Catherine Marquez tells me, sitting in her living room surrounded by photos of Sophia. "For 8 years I prayed for answers. Now I have them, and I would give anything to go back to not knowing." The knowledge that Sophia died at the hands of someone she trusted, someone who had sat at their family dinner table, attended her birthday parties, helped her study for exams, was a betrayal that transcended even grief. Elena Marquez's response was different. She channeled her pain into purpose, becoming an advocate for missing persons investigations and developing a college workshop about recognizing warning signs in group dynamics. "I couldn't save my sister," she says, "but maybe I can help someone else recognize when friendship is turning into something dangerous." 1 month after the case officially closed, Elena visited the evidence storage facility where the Honda Pilot was kept. She had requested special permission, a rarity in concluded investigations, to see the vehicle where 4 young people spent their final moments. "I needed to see it," she explains, "not just hear about it or look at photographs. I needed to stand next to it to make it real." Jensen accompanied her on this difficult pilgrimage. He watched as she circled the rusted chassis, peering through windows clouded by years underwater. "She didn't cry," he recalls. "She just touched the hood, very gently, like she was saying goodbye to more than just her sister." Before leaving, Elena placed a single white rose on the driver's seat, a gesture both of forgiveness and remembrance. For Detective Mark Jensen, the case left professional scars. Though technically solved, his final report included an unsettling caveat: cause, not fully determined. "We know what happened," he explains, "but not entirely why. That's the part that haunts me. What was going through Evan's mind? Was it just the Zolpidem? Was there something deeper that pushed him to this?" Jensen retired 3 months after the case closed, earlier than he had planned. The investigation had consumed 8 years of his career and left him with a persistent unease about the nature of friendship and violence. "You investigate homicides for decades. You think you understand human capacity for harm," he says. But this was different. These weren't strangers. They weren't even enemies. They were friends who somehow, over the course of one night, became something else to each other. Most people think violence happens between strangers or in obviously toxic relationships, Dr. Chen explains. They don't realize how quickly fear, confusion, and confinement can transform even healthy relationships. That's what makes this case so disturbing and so important to understand. When the forensic examination concluded, Dr. Chen submitted the complete evidence archive to the Department of Justice with an unusual classification: closed but unresolved. The designation acknowledges that while the factual sequence of events has been established, the psychological and emotional components remain partially opaque. For Madison's boyfriend, Tom Bennett, who had dedicated years to helping solve the case, the resolution brought an unexpected emptiness. When you chase answers for so long, you start to define yourself by the pursuit, he says. Now that it's over, I wake up some mornings and wonder what I'm supposed to do with this knowledge. How do I live with understanding what happened to her? The case changed not just the families, but the community around them. Sacramento State University established a memorial scholarship in the names of the 5 friends, a gesture that subtly acknowledged the complex nature of the tragedy by honoring all 5 together, without distinction between victim and perpetrator. The site where Sophia's remains were found has become an unofficial memorial. Hikers and locals leave flowers, notes, and small tokens, a spontaneous shrine not just to Sophia, but to all 5 lives cut short that night. The tone in these memorials is not one of judgment or blame, but of collective sorrow. They mourn not just the deaths, but the unraveling of what had once been beautiful. Friendship destroyed from within. Closure isn't what people think it is, Elena reflects. It's not a door that shuts, sealing away pain. It's more like learning to live in a house with a room you can never enter again. You don't forget it's there. You just build your life around the absence. But even in silence, the lake still whispers the same question it's whispered since 2015. What truly happened on that vanished road? 8 years after 5 friends vanished, and months after the truth emerged from Lake Silverthorne's receding waters, the case continues to resonate far beyond the immediate families. It has become, for many, a cautionary tale about the fragility of trust and the dangers that can hide within familiar relationships. Every disappearance begins as something small, Dr. Chen observes. A shortcut taken, a comment unaddressed, a moment where someone should speak up but doesn't. By themselves, these moments seem insignificant. Collectively, they can become fatal. The warning signs were there in the days before the trip, in text messages, in Evan's unsent document, in the tension observed at the gas station. They continued during the journey, in Sophia's text about the road feeling wrong, in the route change that made no logical sense, in the gradual breakdown of communication. Fear fractures communication, Dr. Chen explains. When we're afraid, whether of conflict, rejection, or physical danger, we often retreat into silence. That silence creates space for misunderstanding and escalation. This pattern appears repeatedly in group disappearances and tragedies. The 1959 Dyatlov Pass incident, where 9 Russian hikers died under mysterious circumstances, revealed journal entries suggesting growing tension within the group before their deaths. The 2011 case of 4 friends who died in a blizzard after taking an unmarked ski trail showed evidence of disagreement about their route that was never properly resolved. Survival isn't always about the conditions, Jensen reflects. It's about the company you keep and how you communicate when things start going wrong. The lake itself has become a symbol of what humans hide from each other. Its surface appears calm, navigable, while beneath lies a tangle of submerged trees, hidden currents, and now the evidence of fatal secrets. What we bury, nature never truly forgets, Dr. Chen says. The drought that revealed the Honda wasn't just an environmental phenomenon. It was almost metaphorical, as though the earth itself was tired of keeping secrets. For those who study missing persons cases, the story of the 5 friends offers painful but valuable lessons. It demonstrates how quickly a normal situation can deteriorate when communication breaks down. It shows how confined spaces amplify tension. Most importantly, it illustrates how easily warning signs can be dismissed or misinterpreted until it's too late. Elena Marquez has transformed her grief into advocacy. She launched a podcast called Warning Signs, where she examines cases of group disappearances and identifies the moment where intervention might have changed the outcome. I couldn't save Sophia, she says. I missed her text. I dismissed her concerns. But maybe I can help someone else recognize when a situation is becoming dangerous, when friendship is curdling into something else. The college workshop she developed with Dr. Chen teaches students to recognize red flags in group dynamics: sudden route changes, unexplained tension, isolation from outside communication, one person controlling transportation decisions. The most important lesson is simple, Elena tells participants. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let politeness or group pressure override your internal alarm system. Tom Bennett has channeled his technical expertise into developing an app that allows friends to share real-time location and distress signals even in areas with poor cell reception. The application, named Madison's Beacon, uses satellite technology to maintain connections in remote areas. Technology didn't fail them that night, he explains. Human communication did, but better tools might have given them a lifeline when things started to go wrong. For Detective Jensen, the case has changed how he views missing persons investigations. I used to focus primarily on external threats, he admits. Predators, environmental hazards, criminal elements. Now I look more closely at the internal dynamics of the missing group. Sometimes the danger comes from within. As our understanding of the case has evolved, so has the meaning we derive from it. What began as a mysterious disappearance became a tragic accident, then finally revealed itself as something more complex, a fatal unraveling of trust and communication. Every missing persons case teaches the same brutal truth, Jensen says. Danger doesn't always look like a threat. Sometimes it looks like five friends laughing on a sunny afternoon. Because some stories end in silence, but others begin in those who refuse to stop searching. Lake Silverthorne lies quiet now, its waters having receded to reveal their long-held secret and then gradually returned as seasons changed. From the shoreline, there's no visible evidence of the tragedy that unfolded here. No marker, no memorial, nothing to indicate that 5 young lives converged at this spot and then extinguished, one by one, through a cascade of fear, confusion, and betrayal. Drone footage captured for the investigation shows the lake from above, a perfect blue oval nestled among pine-covered mountains. Beautiful, serene, indifferent to human suffering. The water has receded, but the silence remains, Elena Marquez says, standing at the spot where her sister's remains were found. 5 lives went in, only questions came out. What killed them wasn't the lake or the dark. It was everything they left unsaid. This is perhaps the most important lesson from the tragedy of Madison, Ryan, Sophia, Evan, and Layla. Not that nature is dangerous, or that evil lurks in unexpected places, but that silence itself can become fatal. The words never spoken, the concerns never voiced, the conflicts never addressed. These created the conditions for disaster as surely as the remote location and the dark night. We tell ourselves that friendship is safety, Dr. Chen observes, that being surrounded by people we know protects us from harm. But human connection requires maintenance. It requires honest communication, especially when things feel wrong. The 5 friends who left Sacramento on a sunny afternoon in March 2015 weren't strangers to each other. They had shared classes, apartments, holidays, inside jokes. Their social media showed them celebrating birthdays, studying for finals, supporting each other through breakups and family crises. Yet beneath this visible camaraderie, fractures had formed. Small resentments, unaddressed tensions, trust slowly eroding like the shoreline of a drought-stricken lake. No one wakes up planning for a friendship to end in tragedy, Jensen reflects. It happens in small moments, accumulated over time, until suddenly you're in a situation where you don't recognize the person sitting next to you, or they don't recognize you. For the families left behind, the knowledge that their children's deaths might have been prevented with better communication is perhaps the most painful aspect of their loss. I think about the text Sophia sent me, Elena says, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. 4 words. This road feels wrong. If I'd called her back immediately, if I'd told her to trust that feeling, to demand they turn around, would it have changed anything? I'll never know. This uncertainty, the road not taken, the call not made, the warning not heeded, haunts not just Elena, but all those connected to the case. It's a reminder of how tenuous our safety can be, how dependent on small decisions that seem insignificant in the moment. The Memorial Scholarship established at Sacramento State University doesn't just provide financial support to students. It includes a mandatory workshop on group communication and safety, teaching young people to recognize warning signs, to voice concerns, to trust their instincts even when doing so feels awkward or disruptive. If we can save one group of friends from what happened to Sophia and the others, Catherine Marquez says, then perhaps their deaths will have meaning beyond our grief. As the investigation files are archived and the physical evidence stored away, the story of the 5 friends transitions from active case to cautionary tale. Their names join those of others who vanished and were found too late, a somber litany of lost potential and lessons learned at devastating cost. Yet even in this finality, there is something unfinished about their story. Perhaps because the most important questions aren't factual, but existential. How do we preserve trust while honoring our instincts? How do we speak up when something feels wrong? How do we prevent the slow erosion of connection that can, under the right conditions, turn deadly? The drone footage of Lake Silverthorne fades to static as the file ends. Below, the water continues its ancient rhythm of receding and returning, concealing and revealing, remembering what humans try to forget. The vanishing road, case closed, but never forgotten. If you have experienced moments when something didn't feel right, but you couldn't explain why, don't silence that voice. Your instincts might be recognizing danger before your conscious mind can name it. Share your story. Someone out there might need your warning before their own road trip turns into a tragedy. Because when truth drowns, it takes everyone who loved it down with it.